I'm Miriam Gedwiser. I teach here at Drisha. Let's talk about Noach's raven. After the flood waters begin to recede, Noach opens the ark window and sends out a raven. And this is what the Torah tells us about that. Vayishalach et ha'orev, vayetzei yetzov vashov ad yivoshet hamayim me'al ha'aretz. Right? He sent out the raven, and it went yetzov vashov. Maybe means, we'll translate it for now as to and fro, back and forth, maybe in and out, until the water dried off of the land. After that, Noach sends out a dove to see if the waters had subsided. The dove returns with nothing, then with an olive branch, then doesn't return at all, and Noach knows that the earth is habitable again. So what was the point of the raven? It's kind of the question, right? Unlike with the dove, the Torah tells us the dove is for the purpose of seeing whether the earth is dry or whether the water is receding at least. With the raven, there's no stated reason. And then what it does is go yetzov vashov, which is also sort of obscure. It's going in and out of the ark, around the ark, back and forth from someplace to somewhere else. And why is it doing that? So that's what we're going to try and figure out. The absence of a reason for sending the raven actually led the ancient Jewish allegorist Philo of Alexandria to suggest that the raven, which he saw as a symbol of evil, was being sent away for no purpose other than getting it away. Take the evil, get it out of the ark so we can have our new nice society. Well, that reading doesn't work particularly well with the verse. The symbolism of the raven as evil does seem to have resonated with the rabbis a little bit, as we'll see. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin on page 108b, which is cited by Rashi also, which has the raven as one of three creatures that violated the ban on copulation in the ark. So that seems like some sort of an identification of the raven with the evil impulse, and Noach and the other animals were able to kind of keep that at bay. According to the same Gemara, the raven said to Noach when Noach wanted to send him away, perhaps this is also a reading, having the raven talk to Noah as a reading of Yetzov Vashov, shov as answer, like a teshuvah. So the raven said to Noach, God hates me because God told Noach to bring only me and my mate, one pair onto the ark, but seven pairs of the tahor animals onto the ark. And you, Noach, also hate me because knowing that there's only two of me, you chose me, and if something happens to me, then my species is going to be over. So the raven actually, in this Gemara, therefore says, well, maybe that's what you want, Noach. Maybe you want me to die so that you can have my wife. And the rabbinic presentation of the sin of the generation of the flood before the flood, one of the forms of corruption that precipitated the destruction was actually cross-species mating. And according to various midrashim, the animals that were saved were the ones that didn't engage in these violations. So when the rabbis say that the raven suspected Noach of desiring Mrs. Raven, that identifies the raven with the pre-flood sins rather than the post-flood redemption. In fact, the raven is presented here as an animal that sees itself as the sexual rival of man. It's lusty, it disobeys orders, it has clever retorts, tshuva nitzchonit, I believe is the way the Gemara refers to it. To me, that sounds a little bit like another animal that we previously met, a tricky animal, a sinister animal, an animal that's a sexual rival of man. We met previously in Bereshit, i.e. the snake. Right? In fact, right, the rabbinic idea that the snake desired Adam's wife is sort of the mirror image of the raven's idea that Noach desires his wife, right? So that this raven episode is the first episode after the waters begin to subside suggests that even though the post-flood word might be on one level on a clean, beginning on a clean slate, the same challenges and potential for the same sins, in fact, are still there. On that note, I'd also like to share one sort of less allegorical interpretation of the raven that I think goes somewhere similar. This interpretation is from the medieval commentary Radak, Rabbi David Kimchim. Radak suggests that the reason for sending the raven was the same as for sending the dove. Right? The Torah doesn't state the reason, but it says the reason for the other bird. So it must be the raven was also being sent out to determine whether the waters had receded or were receding. But the reason Noach chose the raven initially was that ravens are scavengers, they eat carrion. This is one of the major differences between ravens and doves. They sort of have similar habitats, they have some similar sort of lifestyle attributes. They're both apparently land-sighting birds, but ravens are sort of omnivores, they eat everything. Doves are vegetarian. So ravens, not only are they omnivores, they're known for eating dead animals. So Noach assumed that, as the waters went down, the corpses of the people and animal who had previously inhabited the earth would be exposed, and the raven would find something to eat. And if it came back with sort of shreds of dead something in its mouth, then he would know that the water was receding. Instead, the raven didn't provide useful information because it would go in and out either without letting Noach see what happened or maybe without going far enough to discover what was actually out there. So actually, this radak I found quite shocking when I read it, because we never really think about the remnants of the destroyed world being there when Noach comes out of the ark. And in fact, if you read the Torah, what we hear is that Vayimach et kol hayikum, right, everything was blotted out, erased, maybe just sort of suggesting no trace was left. But if you think about it, that's what we know, having read the story. It's not necessarily what Noach knows. Noach knows that the water is going down, but he really has no idea what he's going to find. And logic would dictate that what he's actually going to find is not nothing, but all sorts of destruction. Dead people, sort of this post-apocalyptic scenario of corpses and destroyed buildings and whatever you could see in a Hollywood movie. Noach sent the raven because he thought that he might discover this level of destruction. But the raven's mission was unsuccessful, and instead, Noach got his information from a dove in the form of not shredded strings of carrion around her mouth, but an olive branch. As our student in the July poll here, Bachi Weiler, pointed out to me in our class this summer, the sign for Noach is not one that looks backwards in terms of traces of the destruction, but one that looks forward to traces of new growth. But still, we can't forget that the raven is still flying around out there around the ark. Shabbat Shalom.